Well, it says we are streaming live, but I'm giving it just a minute because I don't think we are. Give me just a minute. Yes, we are. We are streaming live. Give it just a minute because I don't got it. Okay. Hello, everybody. We know there'll probably be some more folks on in a few minutes. I'm just getting it set up real quick. We're so glad to have you tonight. And I think we're ready to go. So we want to thank you for coming tonight. We've got folks listening on the radio. Let me get them going here. Now we have folks listening on the radio. We didn't. So looking forward to what Terry has prepared for us. Rabbi Pesach may be on in a few minutes, but you're listening to Torah for the Nations. We're glad, did I B'nai Noach Connection with Israel and Torah for the Nations and Facebook and YouTube channel. We're so glad to have you here tonight. I got a couple of dedications I want to do real quick before Terry gets in. Terry, if you want to go ahead and unmute, you can you did already, didn't you? Hi, Terry. How you doing?
Hello.
Hello. So I've got a couple of dedications I want to do in blessed memory. Some of these are just the first names. This is some folks that came off on the radio in different places in blessed memory of Gary, Jerry Baker, Lynn Thompson, and Judy Williams. We also want to dedicate this tonight for the speedy recovery, healing for John, Thomas, Ben, Carol, David, and Bill Lyons. So we're going to do one more thing tonight. I do this all the time, and I just felt like doing it tonight, Terry, and I asked you if it's okay, and you said yes. Listen, charity is a powerful thing. Charity is something that us B'nai Noach can do that to change us, change our family, change our community, and change the world. So I want to give this charity tonight in behalf of all those names that I gave. And we trust that you this week will give some charity and think of somebody in your family. Think of somebody that's sick when you do it, or in blessed memory of somebody. Again, if you change, you can change you, your family, your community, and in turn, change the world. Terry, how you doing tonight?
I am doing good. Can you hear me okay?
We can hear you great. Everybody nod yeah, Thomas says we can hear you good. So if you want to go ahead, Terry, do you need me to cover anything else before we get started?
No, I'm fine. Everything
okay.
Seems to be doing really well. I want to thank everyone for being here tonight and greet everybody as well here in the Zoom room, radio station, B'nai Noach Connection, Facebook page, Torah for Nations, YouTube channel. And we hope to continue to even grow even further than those as we go on. Tonight, we're going to be covering a subject that I'm going to say was inspired by a question that Scotty got. Last week, we discussed in the Hebrew, Hadishidat, and that's Hebrew, which means in English, we're prohibited from creating a new religion or adding to ourselves a new commandment. And we were basically asked, well, what does that really mean? Well, first off, the Hebrew and the English, I really, be honest with you, the more you learn Hebrew, the less you like the English translation. It just, so much gets hidden there. It's actually in the Hebrew, the last word is dot, which is the Hebrew word for knowledge. We're not to create a new knowledge, a knowledge that didn't exist before. We're not permitted to do that through our imaginations and our impulses and desires and whims. We have to be careful, or we will create a new knowledge or a new religion, or we'll see something that we want to do or think that we're inspired and it's really cool to do it, and we wasn't commanded to do that. So tonight I want to go through what, how and the danger of creating what's creating a new religion and adding commandments to ourselves. Our rabbi taught us a long time ago, early on, a statement I've never forgot. And that is, walking with God, walking with the Creator, is not a religion. It's a reality. And we're going to learn a little bit about that tonight. We're going to go back. One of the things Scotty and I like to do, if you've watched any of our videos on our YouTube channel, The Sacred Odyssey, in doing certain things, we like to go back where it's first brought out and come forward. And that's what I'm going to be doing tonight. I'm going to be covering two areas. The creating, the new, how religion began, and what it means to add a new commandment. We have two examples within the Torah that we can learn from. And so the first one, we're going to be dealing with the issue of religion. And when you read the translation, or when you read this translation in your English Bible, you don't get the story. One, there's some words there that helps it understand what's going on. It's in the Hebrew. Two, there is 3,400 years of traditional historical information that's come down through the Jews in Israel from Mount Sinai, from the time when Moses went up on the mountain with the Creator. There's things that they have in their history and their historical recordings that we in the nations did not have. And so I'm going to be bringing some of this out tonight in the understanding of this passage. It's in Genesis chapter 4, verse 26. And it says, and to Seth, in turn, a son was born. He called him Enosh. It was then that man began to proclaim the name of God. On the surface, that doesn't look bad. But when you get into the Hebrew and the understanding of who Enosh was, tells a different story than just reading in an English translation. Rabbi Hirsch, in his commentary on this verse, brings out the point that says development, like human development, is not strictly upward and progressive. Sometimes there is a steep decline. And so Seth, in turn, and to Seth, in turn, a son was born, and he called his name Enosh. Enosh signifies man in decline, as opposed to Adam is the pure state of man. Enosh denotes man who does not live up to the name of Adam. Adam is a representative and a deputy of God. He works in God's service, thus leads the world to a healthy development. Enosh, by contrast, misuses his position and seizes power for himself, and through violent and coercive means, he brings mortal illness upon the world. Now we're going to go a little further into the story of Enosh. I can say there's going to be quite a few that's not heard this. I hadn't heard it for years either, until I got into the studies that I've been in since 2008 or so. In the Mishnah Torah, in the book of what's called the Book of Knowledge, written by the Rambam, he goes through the history of Enosh. And I think you're going to find this very interesting. It says, during the time of Enosh, mankind made a great mistake, and the wise men of the generation gave thoughtless counsel. Enosh himself was one of those who erred. Their mistake was as follows. They said, This is important. They said God created stars and spears, the heavenly bodies, with which to control the world. He placed them on high and treated them with honor, making them his servants who minister before him. Now understand, everything God creates, even the grass, ministers before him. They do what he designed. We discussed that, 2 lessons back, from Genesis 1, verse 11 and 12, that the vegetation came, God brought it forth after each of its own kind. And he did all this before he brought, like you said, I'm just recapping, before he brought man on board. Every one of them are given duties to do. They're given natural laws to follow. They don't have free will. They have to do it. So in essence, when you see a mighty oak growing in a forest, it is serving the Creator in the way it was made. And so this was known. This was known to early man. And they knew that even the planets and the stars served God. They do have a power over the earth. They do have power over the nations. God put that in there with them. And man began to see that. And they thought, well, hey, these are like the king's princes. And so they figure they need honor. We need to honor them. They represent the king. It says, accordingly, it was fitting to praise and glorify them and to treat them with honor. They perceived this to be the will of God. See, God never told them to do this. Remember, they said God created the stars. They perceived. It was their own imagination that brought this on. Not the word of God did not come to them and say to do this. It says this, they said that this is the will of God, blessed be he, that they glorify and they honor those who he glorified and honored, just as the king desires that the servants who stand before him be honored. Indeed, doing so is an expression of the honor of the king. Just like when the way a diplomat of any nation comes, you treat that diplomat, he represents that nation. And so they felt that the stars, the moon, and the sun all needed to be honored. And in doing so, they honored the Creator. That's what they thought. And that's how it really began. After conceiving of this notion, they began to construct temples to the stars and offered sacrifices to them. They would praise and glorify them with words and prostrate themselves before them. And because by doing so, they would, according to their false conception, be filling the will of God. This was the essence of the worship of false gods. This is where idolatry began. And when idolatry began, idolatry brought with it religion. There was never a religion before. How do we know this? What was the religion of Adam?
Wasn't one.
What was the religion of Noah? What was the religion of Abraham? And God said about Abraham that he teaches his children my ways, the way of God. The way of God is not a religion. It's a reality. But see, when idolatry formed in man, so did religion, as we know it. If you look up, in English, religion has basically, if you have a code of beliefs and yeah, everything has a code of a code. We've talked about it before. You get an owner's manual of your lawnmower out. There's a code in there on what to do and what not to do. Is that a religion?
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Your lawnmower manual will tell you what oil to use, what oil not to use, how to take care of it, how to maintain it, to clean it, to make sure that it operates according to the manufacturer specs. Is that a religion? No. When God created man, he gave him a code to live by, not a religion. So now we have, at the time of Enosh, that they're bringing this worship of the stars, and it began the worship of false gods.
Terry,
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. I just got this question. I'm afraid if you go off of it, I won't get to come back around to it.
Okay.
You're talking about they implemented, if I can use that word, the worship of the stars and the things that Hashem created, that the Creator created.
Right.
Now,
right.
were they worshiping that item, or were they attempting to worship the Creator through that item?
Yes and no.
Yes and no.
Yes, they were worshiping. They were worshiping. Let's make it easy. They were worshiping the moon, but in doing so, they believed in the beginning. In the beginning, they believed they were giving honor to the Creator.
So that's right.
You understand, this was a creation of man, not a commandment of God, and that's why it went off stray. And we're going to be getting into that.
Okay.
And it says, so this was the essence of the worship of false gods, and this was the rationale of those that worshiped them. They would not say, at the beginning, it said they would not say that there was no God except the star. They didn't say that at the beginning. This message was conveyed by Jeremiah by declaring in Jeremiah 10:8, who will not fear you, King of the nations, who will be fitting, for you it is fitting among all the wise men of the nations and of their kingdoms that there is none like you. And so, let's see, make sure I don't bypass something I had highlighted here. Okay, I may be coming back to this. When you read in Genesis 4:26, and they began. Let me see here. Make sure I got this. When they began to call on the name of God, the word began there in the Hebrew. It can mean it's hull. It can mean began, but it also has another meaning. It means to profane. So the sages also sees this verse. They began to profane the name of God.
Can you explain what that word means, Terry?
Hold on. I've got something here that
I don't mean to catch you off guard on these.
No, you didn't catch me off guard. I've got several things highlighted. Okay, it says the word began, it's in the Hebrew, is hakal. It's in English, is the Hebrew transliteration to English is huchal. It means begin, but its negative tense is to profane. And we've talked about that before, Hillel. When we say Hillel Hashem, to profane the name of God. It says, man began calling non-sacred objects God. And when we call a non-sacred object God, it's profaning his name.
Mm.
And that's what it's telling us in Genesis 4:26. So it helps to know to research and find out what it's actually saying in a passage, especially in a translation. If you make a I want to say how you say this here correctly. If you make a statement or even a doctrine or a belief based on a translation, you're most likely going to be in error. That's why it's so important to, when we can, learn as much of the original language as possible, regardless. Even with, if you're learning something else, if you want to learn how to cook certain foods, go to the source, if you want a national, an international food, go to that land, look at the language that's used in that recipe. that will even tell you more than just sometimes it translated even into English and something as simple as a recipe. Just using it as an example. The first generation of star worshipers were aware of God's existence and conceived of the stars as no more than intermediaries between them and him. That was within the first generation of star worshipers. They just seen them as an intermediary. But then we know as time goes on. So they have one foolish and senseless notion. They conceived of their empty teachings as would all know that you alone are God. Their foolish errors consisted of conceiving of this emptiness as God's will. That was a foolish notion, that this is God's will to worship these stars, and it wasn't. They conceived upon themselves. After many years passed, false prophets arose among the people, who told the people that God had commanded them to say, serve this star or all the stars, sacrifice to it, offer libations to it, build a temple for it, and make an image of it. And so all the people did, including the children, the women and the children and the common people, so they could bow down to it. So false prophets said, this is what God said. We know in the Torah, it is a very major mistake to say God said and he didn't. And so this is what they were doing. The false prophet would inform them, of a form that he had conceived, and to tell them that this is the image of a particular star, claiming that this was revealed to him in a prophetic vision. In this manner, the people began to make images in temples, under trees, and top of mountains and hills. People would gather together and bow down to these images and to these false prophets, and would say, the image is the source and the benefit of, they say, the image is the source of benefit or harm. It is appropriate to serve it and to fear it. Their priest would tell them, this service will enable you to multiply and be successful. Do this or do that, or don't do this or don't do that. Subsequently, other deceivers arose and declared that a special star or spear or angel had spoken to them and commanded them, serve me in this manner. He would then relate a mode of service, telling them, do this or don't do this. It says, anyone who states that God told him in a prophetic vision to worship idols should be considered a false prophet. The Rambam describes on how people can be overcome by their powers of imagination to the extent that they, and as do others who see them in such of a trance, think of themselves as prophets, although in the fact they receive no divine influence. Thus, this represents a second stage in the spread of idol worship. First, I ain't going to go into that part of it. That's a little more detailed. The first is individuals because of their mistaken conceptions. The second phase involves the development of religious institutions and sets of modes of worship. The leaders, however, still recognized God and attributed the instructions to worship the stars to him. In the third stage, the latter portion, the people would worship the stars and the idols without any awareness of God. Thus, the practice is spread throughout the world. People would serve images with their practices, one more distorted than the other, offered sacrifices to them, bowed down to them. Years passed. God's glorious and awesome name was forgotten by all humankind. It was no longer part of their speech or thought. It was no longer it was no longer known to them. Thus, all the common people, the women and the children, would know only the image of wood or stone and the temples of the stone to which they were trained from their childhood to bow down and to serve them, and in whose name they swore. So as time passed, this is all they knew. Everything from the beginning had been forgotten. Everything from the beginning had changed. It went from just mere honoring the moon because it served God and it represented God to where it was God. And that's all they knew. And the Creator was forgotten.
Terry, I'm not going to ask you right now, but you got a ton of questions going through my mind. But
I
I'm
know.
not going to ask you right now. I'm going to hold them to the end of the class.
I.e., they conceived of the images of gods. Such worship represented more than mere conceptual error. 6 of the 7 mitzvot, or the commands, that came down from Adam to Noah and his descendants, which was, like I said, was given to him. Among them was the prohibition against serving other gods. Thus, by worshiping the images, they were breaking an explicit divine commandment. And this is how religion began. It began innocently, but because it was not a commandment of God, and it was of the imagination of man who began idol worship, which created religion, it became really what we have today. Look at all the religions that's on the earth. All the religions on the earth started by imagination, by someone saying they had a vision or they discovered this or that. You see, this is why Israel and the commandments of Israel is not a religion. They are a code of conduct. They are a code of conduct given to them by the Creator. The non-Jewish nations was given a code of conduct as well. And we will be getting into that, not in this lesson, but we're going to be getting into it in detail and studying them and learning what this code of conduct is and how it's not. Yes, it's a code. It's a creed, but it's a code of conduct, but it's not a religion. And I won't be getting into that when I get into this second part. But go ahead, Scotty. What kind of questions you got before we leave Enosh?
How? Let's see if I can formulate. I'm going to try to put this together from 2 different questions that just came through. Okay, how were the people swayed so easily? Were they unlearned, or did they just not care? How was they swayed? Now, I just finished a little book by Rabbi Nachman, but I'm not going to bring that into this discussion since you're bringing out that. How was they swayed so easily?
Well, Enosh was the grandson of Adam. Mankind as a race began to spread out. And we have free will. We've discussed that in past few classes. We have free will to choose to follow. Well, Adam, if you think about it, he was the closest to God. I mean, when he opened his eyes, he was in the presence of God. And like anything else, the further you get away from the source, the weaker that gets. Just almost like if you have a river that it goes down into a creek, into a branch, until eventually it becomes a trickle, the further it gets away from the source. And so the people, we in ourselves, God created within ourselves, we have a soul. He breathed into every man, the image of God. We all contain a spark. Every human being contains a spark of the divine. And in that spark, it desires a spiritual relationship with its creator. But if you have no knowledge of that creator, It doesn't do away with that spiritual desire. It seeks out. And so these, the wise men of at the time of Enosh raised up really this thing that satisfied a spiritual desire.
Mm.
In that generation, they knew there was a God. They all did. All men, women, and children, everybody did. It says they did. And so this was we're going to honor the servants of God. And in doing so, we're going to give God honor. That's the same way of honoring your mother and your father. You honor God. That's the same way. But as time grew and went down the road, it went from honoring the servant of God to worshiping the servant of God to where this is God. It just progressively grown into idolatry, and the idolatry grew into religion, because then they began to have things that they did, how they done it, how they bowed, and where they worship in temples, and it created a religious format around that false god. So it's a matter of time. No, I'm not going to go what was in my mind right now. It would have been no. I can get my mind just goes.
Yeah.
Scotty knows how he gets me to thinking. Well, I'm going to give a physical example without getting into details. At one time, we were like Mayberry in the United States.
Yeah.
Are we like Mayberry today? No. And that's what happened there. Mayberry was Eden for Adam. And the further he got away from it, and his descendants got away from it, the further Mayberry got away from it. That's the only way I know how to explain it in a, kind of metaphorical way. I hope that fits. Does that fit okay? And does that answer your question, Scotty?
Yeah. I think it done. I think it done great. I think it did great.
Anything else about Enosh?
Well, there's another one, but I think we need to wait on it.
Okay.
And it's based on how do we get back.
Okay. We that won't be in this class, but it's
okay.
We're working in that direction.
Okay.
Because like I said, if God gave commandments to Adam, who passed them to Noah, who passed them to Shem, who passed them to Abraham, what are they? And we're going to be getting, not in this class, but in future classes, we're going to be getting into these commandments. In Hebrew, I like the Hebrew word better. They're mitzvot. When you understand the word mitzvot, it takes that negative sharp edge off of the word commandment. Because mitzvot is beautiful. It's a beautiful thing. Just as an example, when you hold a door open for someone, or you help someone who is in need, who isn't physically capable, up a set of stairs, you just did a mitzvah. Did you do a command? Well, yeah, love your neighbor as yourself. That's a command. But mitzvah is more beautiful. It's just when you begin to understand the word mitzvah in your mind. If I can make a plug, learn what a mitzvah is in the Hebrew, instead of just being a raw law and raw command. Is it a raw law? Is it a raw command? Yes. But mitzvah is that and more. If I can make a plug for a couple of Hebrew words that I really like, and that's one of them. Because I understand in my mind how it works, and sometimes it's hard to get it back out into English. Now we're going to segue over to the second part of this. The first part here again is what we discovered in creating a new religion. Religion began as idolatry, and idolatry birthed religion. And that's how that happened. When you add something, you create a new religion. Again, they added, in the times of Enosh, they added the worship of the stars. They added that. And when they did that, they created a religion. That's why the prohibition of creating a religion or adding a commandment is one and the same. That's why they're together. It's why you'll see them a lot of times when they're written about, mentioned together. So can you see that? They added worshiping of the stars when it wasn't commanded. They added a commandment that wasn't there. In doing so, they created a new religion.
So they didn't add on to one that was already there. They added a new one to what already existed.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
Kind of, sort of, yes. I mean, and again, they set out with good intentions. As we're going to see what happens here. We're going to go to the book of Leviticus. Let me look, see, I forgot what chapter it is because I've been reading it all week, but let me pull it up here so you can write it down in your notes. It's in the book of Biacra. It's in Leviticus 9 and verse 10. We're going to begin. And Aaron's sons, Nadav and Abihu, each took his pan, put fire into them, placed incense upon it, brought it near before God, strange fire, which he had not commanded them. Hold on. The fire went forth before God and consumed them, and they died before God. Verse 2. Let's look at this, what it says in English really close. It says, and the sons of Aaron, Nadav and Abihu, took his own pan. I'm going to be reading in the commentary. I'm probably going to repeat myself, but I just wanted to bring this out.
Yeah.
Who were the sons of Aaron? Who was Aaron? Aaron was the first high priest, the brother of Moses. His sons were priests. They were Kohanim. These guys were the beginning, the first. After God brought Israel out of Egypt and after they built the tabernacle. Well, within the tabernacle, they had their own utensils. They had to be used in the service of God. But it says here they brought their pans and they put a fire upon them. It was a strange fire. Why was it strange? Because it wasn't the fire that came from God. They were to take the pans within the tabernacle, the fire pans, and they were to take the fire from upon the altar that God had lit himself. But they perceived upon themselves. They were enthusiastic. They were zealous. They meant no harm. Literally, they meant no harm. They were so excited. But it says here, in which God had not commanded them. That's important. And they died. They died for their zealousness. And it wasn't their attitude that got them killed. In essence, it was, but they chose to do something. They chose to add a commandment. They added to something that God had not commanded. And it cost them. It's interesting, Rabbi Hirsch says they did not consult with their father before acting. Their father was the high priest. He's the one that stood with Moses in the Exodus and was the mouthpiece of God. I mean, for Moses and was there when everything was happening. He was there in the tent of meeting with Moses and stuff a lot of times. And you would think that they would go and say, "Hey, Dad, what do you think?" He He had been in the very midst of the power and the glory of God with Moses. And yet they didn't even take time to consult such a person that would never exist again. They didn't consult their father. There's a lesson in that. There's a big lesson in that. I mean, there might be even a whole teaching just in
that's what I was thinking.
Consulting your father before you act. Rabbi Hirsch goes on and says, each of them acted solely on their own initiative, just like Enosh and the wise men of that generation acted on their own initiative to worship stars. You see the parallel here? Their offerings were illegal. Their fire pan, they brought their fire pans, their own ideas into the tabernacle, and it was illegal. They did not bring their offerings in vessels of the sanctuary, like I was saying. There were vessels in the sanctuary to do the service of God. They brought their own without this was a hard word sometimes for me. Renunification. They didn't nullify themselves. They did not nullify themselves. They went in with their own zealousy without consulting their father, thinking that they could bring something new onto to the table. When God said, here's the vessels, here's the fire, 1, 2, 3, do this. And that's what God wanted. Again, that's not a religion. It was a code. It was a code of conduct for the operation of the tabernacle, the house of God. This was going to be the house of God. You shall make unto me a sanctuary where I may dwell among you. This was his house rules. And they neglected them. That's just like if I was to go to my dad's house and do whatever I want to do. Matter of fact, at one time when I was first married, and my eldest daughter was just, months old, I had to move back home. We were moving across state lines, and I was working with my dad. And so I had to live with my mom and dad for about a month till we got us a place to live. And my dad let me know I was married. I had a baby and everything, but he let me know this is my house. Rules hasn't changed. Be in at such and such time. I don't care if you're married and got a kid. We're going to bed. And I don't need you banging doors. And so this is this. They did not bring their offerings in vessels of the sanctuary. They brought their own. They did not take fire from the altar as was prescribed for the daily offerings. That is to say, they did not take the fire of the Torah. See, the Torah, the 5 books of Moses, has a nickname, and one has many nicknames, and one of it is fire. When you begin to study the Torah, you'll really understand that it's a fire. So they did not take the fire of the altar. He goes on and says, if given the expression of one, it says, it is giving the expression of one's choice. The idea entails the great arrogance. See, they had arrogance. Now, as regards to this disastrous offering of the 2 sons of Aaron, the Torah stresses above all else that it was one which God had not commanded them to make. Even if the details of their offering had not been forbidden, The mere fact that this offering had not been commanded by God would have been sufficient for it to be forbidden. Rabbi Hirsch goes on and says, one who brings an offering seeks closeness to God. And that's what, see, the English word offering or sacrifice does not describe it. It's korban. And korban means to draw near, which is a whole different mindset, a whole different understanding of what was going on in the temple and the altar of God, and what will be going on in the future when the third temple is there and when the altar is relit by Hashem. There, it's a korban to draw near, and it's a whole total different kind of mindset than what we in the West would even understand. We think they're sacrificing an animal. No, that's not what's going on. Sacrifice means you're giving up something. No, when you come to the altar of God, what you're giving up is yourself so you can draw close to God. If there's anything given up, you're just laying your will aside so you can walk into the will of God, which is better than any will you'll ever have. And that's part of being free choice. He wants us to have the free choice to do that. He doesn't want us to be robots and be, he gives a commandment, but then we have the opportunity to obey or disobey. That's what it's been about the whole time. We get to make the choice. He wants to see what choice we'll make. But one who brings the offering seeks closest to God, but this can be attained only through obedience to God and acceptance of the yoke of his commandments. All offerings, not the sentence above that. Let's see here. It says, his offerings undertake to adopt divine imperative as his guiding light. Offering of one's own devisings would be of subversion of that very truth, which the offering intended to represent. Such offerings would glorify personal caprice, your misgivings, instead of obedience to God. Personal, it says here, see, such offerings like what the sons of Aaron did not represent the obedience of God or the acceptance of the yoke of his commandments. Now we understand that the death of Aaron and his son, or death of Aaron's sons, sorry about that, their death at the time of the first dedication of the sanctuary is a warning to all of the future. It bars all arbitrariness and personal caprice from the precincts of the sanctuary, whose whole purpose is to be a sanctuary for the Torah. The priest's function is not to introduce innovations to the service, but to carry out God's commands. And I know I just was reading from Rabbi Hirsch's commentary on it, but basically like this. I'm going to give you a metaphor. It's not really a metaphor. It's stating what it says. Israel's priest, the Kohanim, they were not to bring their own innovations into it. They were to do the commandments of God. They were to use the vessels in the tabernacle to serve the Creator as he said to serve him. Now, I want you to think about this as a metaphor in a way. Those of us in the nations, we are not the priest, and we will never be a priest. You can convert and you'll never be a Kohanim. Kohanim is they're a special breed of people that God set forth in Israel out of the tribe of Levi. Our commandments, there are 7 categorical commandments, which we'll be getting into in further classes. Each commandment is a sacred vessel in which to serve the Creator. That's why innovating your own ways of worship, your own styles of religion, is forbidden because they're not commanded. But the commandment, just giving you an example, the prohibition of murder. God says man shall not shed, the blood of man shall not be shed by another man, because man is created in the image of God. The prohibition of murder is a category. It's a category. There's a lot of stuff that goes with it that we'll learn. Making someone blush, raising your hand in anger to a person, all falls under the category murder. Well, that is a holy and divine vessel. The commandment itself is a vessel, divine vessel that we are to serve the Creator with. We can't go into the tabernacle where there's the menorah and the fire pans and the tables of showbread and all this other, and the Holy of Holies and all these things that you read in the Torah, what's in the sanctuary. We can't go in there and use those utensils. Those were, again, we weren't made of that kind. They were made of that kind. Go back and listen to our messages on YouTube. We're talking about the law of the same kind. God said each one will have a cedar will be a cedar, of an oak, a grass, and a corn, and everything has its own laws. Well, in Israel, the same thing. Not every Jew can go. When you read in there, fear God, keep my commandments, doesn't mean you can open your Bible and read a commandment and think it's for you. You've got to know who it's talking to. You have to understand it, because not even a Jew can add a commandment that wasn't given to them. Your average Jew might go to Jerusalem one day in the day of the temple and decide that he wants to go in and he wants to put oil in the menorah. He can't do that. He just added a commandment that wasn't his. He created a new religion because he wasn't a Kohanim that was designated to put oil in the menorah. And so the same thing is with us. We are a separate entity. God created the non-Jew for the purpose of the settling of the world and to establish moral and ethical societies upon the earth, so that his will will be brought out. We are not the priest, but we weren't given a voidness. We were given 7 holy vessels in which to serve the Creator, in which in Hebrew they're called the Sheva Mitzvos B'nai Noach, or the 7 commandments of mankind. They are holy vessels. You might come up and say, I want to worship so-and-so, and I want to do this, or I want to worship this, cow over here. We're going to worship that. No, that God did not command mankind to create a new religion of the worship of his creation. We are not to worship anything that was created. Anything, whether it be a moon, a star, a rock, a cow, a cat, a person. If it breathed and walked on the earth in the physical, we are prohibited to worship it. God says he never showed us a form. As a matter of fact, the first commandment of the 10 commandments, which is Israel's commandments, the first and second commandment there says, you shall not make no other, have no other gods before me. In the Hebrew, it says you shall not put another image on my face. And this is how it all began. Worshiping images that wasn't him. Began as idolatry, and idolatry turned into religion. And so I'm hoping I'm bringing that. He did not leave us empty-handed to serve him. We don't have to create anything. We have 7 holy vessels. The prohibition of idolatry. the prohibition of blasphemy, the prohibition of murder, the prohibition of theft, the prohibition of forbidden sexual activities, not eating meat taken from a living animal, which also represents the care of the creation, and the setting up just courts. Those are 7 holy vessels that contains a lot of fire, if I can put it that way as a metaphor. They're very detailed, and we're going to be learning some of this. But these things is what God says for the nations. This is how you walk with me. That's why it's not a religion, it's reality. This is how, when you read in Noah, God says Noah was a righteous man, pure in his generation. And then it says a few verses down, he walked with God. How did Noah walk with God? Read further. It says he did everything God told him to do. It's all there. And it's beautiful. It's beautiful to look at the 7 laws of the nations as holy vessels. We don't go into the sanctuary. We can't use the fire pans in the sanctuary. We use the fire pans of the commandments. And we don't create our own fire pan thing. Oh, this is how we're going to do it. No, we have to learn. We have to take the fire from the Torah. That is our altar per se. I'm using metaphors now. We take the fire of those commandments, those mitzvot, through the vessel of that mitzvah, and we serve God. Kindness to one another is part of the mitzvah. Charity, as Scotty talked about at first, is part of the fire. Some things are not directly commanded, but they're obligations because of the commandment. I know Scotty's sitting there. He's got something he's wanting to say. Go ahead, Scotty.
Just a bunch of stuff flooding in, Terry. One of the listeners hinged and caught what you said. They weren't out to do harm, but yet it still wasn't the way that the Creator designed it to happen.
No, they would just be like, I'm trying to use an example today. No, they had no ill intent, none, zero. They were excited.
But now, if they would have consulted with their father,
he would have helped control their burn.
Yeah, that's.
He says, okay, take that excitement, but do it this way, the way you're commanded. Don't stop being excited. Don't stop being zealous, but do it in the way that the Creator desired it to be. Does that help?
Yeah. And I've got a question I want to push in here, but I don't know.
I'm at the end of everything I was going to cover. I hope I covered it okay. If not, just bring me back around.
Great.
We have time for some discussion on this topic.
Well, I got a question. I think it's on this topic. It's a question that came in. It almost comes in every week. Hold on a minute. Cleared my throat so I can present this. Okay. The Creator gave you last week and the week before, you talked about, especially a couple of weeks ago, you talked about the law of his kind, staying in your lane. Can I present it like that?
Right. Stay in your lane. Yeah.
What about these? And again, if you want to wait and use this at a future class, people can write this down and you'll know where your directive is going to be in the future. What about those that are not satisfied with their obligations or responsibilities, but they want to reach out and grab somebody else's and change it to fit their needs and do it.
That's not correct either. If we seek to change it to our way, we're using our innovation, our imaginations, our arrogance, forcing our will upon the Creator. Some feel that they see Israel with 613 commandments and we have 7 categories. That's why it's not just 7. It is 7 mitzvot, but they're categorical. They're very deep. As the Rambam states, you don't have to continue to just do that. Convert and be part of Israel and be bound to the whole Torah.
Yeah.
You can do that. You can do that. But we're not permitted to take a little here and a little there, what we want and what we think.
Pick and choose.
We can break the prohibition of theft. We'll be stealing from somebody else. Okay. I'm going to be honest with you. And I don't mean this in any offensive way. The more I study the 7 categorical, divine categorical commands of God, the mitzvot, the more excited I get. Scotty knows me. I keep getting more excited, more excited every day we talk. I get more excited. It's no longer, I mean, I one time I had the exact same feeling. Well, that ain't enough. That's because I didn't know what it was. Let me tell you how much enough 7 categorical commandments are. You could study them the rest of your life and not know it all.
Right.
They're eternal. They are eternal as the Creator themselves. And there is no way to know them. The day that you think, well, I know them, don't, you don't know. I'm Southern. You don't know nothing. I'm speaking Tennessean there.
Yeah.
And I don't say that in an arrogant way, because the more I study, the less I know. And I'm the first one to tell you, I don't know anything. I'm learning myself and studying. It's just like when I was studying this, there was things here that I learned. I studied this in the past, but the depthness of it hit me. And I'm like, oh, wow, there's a whole section right there I need to study. Oh, I need to study this. I need to study. Just the fact they grabbed their fire pans. There were some already, there were fire pans provided for them. And they decided to grab their own. There are 7 commandments provided for us, but yet we want to grab our own or someone else's. See what we can get just from that?
Yeah.
See, they're deep, they're beautiful, they're awesome. I'm excited about these. And like I said, we've got to be careful. There are now on the other side of it, well, not necessarily on the other side, but on the same side of the album, maybe a different track. There are permissible commandments outside of the 7 that if we want to take part in, I don't like using the word observe, because we can't observe them the way they are meant to be observed 100%, but we can partake in them. We do this through the guidance of a rabbi who will teach us what that is. They teach us the boundaries. The reason why we don't add a new religion, like I brought up in the last class, this sets our boundaries. It tells us who we are according to our kind. These commandments, this not creating religion, not adding. If we just stick with the 7 and their details, it will bring out who you are and who God created you to be. And each of us there's going to be different things that's going to click with. There's things that click with Scotty. Charity clicks with Scotty. There's other things that clicks with me, and there may be things that click with you, that you can bring your personality into the observance of what God has told you to do. That beautifies the commandment. We don't talk about that. You don't hear among the Noahites, let's beautify the commandments. And we beautify the commandments through our own personality, our own character traits. I like helping people when I can. That falls within our mitzvahs, to be kind, to be generous, to help others. And you can beautify that. Scotty loves to give. His family loves to give, and that's beautiful. You know, you might be how many times you read a story on Facebook or something where somebody shares a story how they were broke down and this person out of nowhere shows up with a truck with tools and helped them and never charged them a dime and got them back on the road and all that. That's beautifying the commandment.
Yeah.
But when we do that because of the Creator that is in us, that even stokes the fire. So there's a lot that do that, and out of kindness, out of their nature, which is great and which is awesome. But to bring it to the next level, to sanctify that, to make that commandment even holier, we do it because of the image of God that is in us, the image of God that's in that person, and for the Creator himself. And we can make these things beautiful and glorious. And there's 7 of them, just like there's 7 branches of the menorah. And we can put fire, we can put oil, and we can put oil in this menorah of the seven commandments. And it can burn bright, and it can shine in the world and help bring beauty and peace and tranquility to this earth. You tell Scotty knows I get into this.
Yeah. Yeah.
What else we got going on, Scotty?
Well, I got another thing to ask to
You
kind of
go right ahead.
on, but I'm reminded of a story, something this is personal to me, and what you brought up, and I'm going to use the word elevating it to the glory of the Creator. I remember there was something happened a couple of years ago, and it happens all the time, and I think it happens to put us in the position of giving the Creator glory and credit, if I can say it that way. So anyway, I had bought some stuff at a local home improvement store. And when I got to the job, I realized there was an item there that I didn't pay for. I didn't want it. It just got in there extra. I was already out of the store with it. So I took it back to the store and I had to go through this big explanation of explaining why I'm bringing this back. And they was looking at me like, are you crazy? You was out of the store with it. I had religious people we'll not cover that. I had religious people tell me, standing behind me, you was out of the store with it. What'd you bring it back for? So finally, the cashier, bless her heart, she couldn't figure out how to return something that wasn't bought. And so I said, just bring the manager over here and let me explain it to the manager. And so the manager came over, and he and I are good friends, and I explained to him what happened. He says, well, that's great. We'll just put it back on the shelf. I thank you for doing the right thing. And I said, well, I didn't do it because it was the right thing. I did it because the Creator commanded me to do it.
Right.
That caught more attention when I involved the Creator in it, in the conversation. That really, the people that were religious that was telling me I should have brought it back, I've seen them drop down a couple notches. And people who didn't have any kind of religion, I've seen it spark something in them. Like wow, So I just wanted to put that in there.
Right. See, this is beautifying the commandments. When I guess my own little testimony, when I first started this walk and learning that there were 7 commandments that There, for when I first came to this was my birthright. I was kidnapped at birth and put into a religion, and I didn't know I had a birthright. And technically, these seven commandments is the birthright of all humanity. And we were all kidnapped in one form or another before we had the opportunity to even know we had a birthright. And so when I was first became aware of my birthright and I began to take hold of what was mine, we was in the process of selling our house, was going to move into an apartment for a while. And I went into a store and I was going to get some of them free realtor books for apartments and things like that. And I'd accidentally picked up a little bitty local trader magazine, and on top of it said 99 cents. And I didn't know it. I'd gotten it. Thought I just got these realtor and apartment guides. They were free. And when I saw that I had something that required purchase, I went back in the store and I put it back on the shelf and I walked out and I went, wow, thank you, God, for telling me not to steal. I just about stole something, even though it was in ignorance. I just about stole something, and thank you for telling me not to do that. And that was one of my first experiences when I discovered my birthright.
Yeah.
And including like Kay said, including the Creator in the conversation.
Yeah.
That was an amazing way of putting that.
So, can I pull us back to the front?
Yes.
You begin to tell us how that religion, the steps that begat religion, if I can say it. Can I say it that way? The steps that begat religion.
The birthing point of it. Yes.
The big thing that I hear in the position of the B'nai Noach today, well, we just got to be careful about not starting a new religion. We just have to be careful. We can't. We got to watch. And I guess one of the one of the major ways to prevent that is to get a proper teacher and discuss with them what you are doing. But if we was to, and I don't know if you want to present it here today, just briefly, and maybe expound on it on the next class. But if we were to define religion, can you do that? Can you define religion? What does it mean to start a new religion?
In an essence, when you look at if you go to dictionary.com or the Webster's Dictionary and you look up the word religion, it will talk about having a code of faith, a code of rituals, a way, a specific plan of worship and things like that of a deity of some form. If you put it in its most elementary point, observing the 7 laws would fall as a religion in its English intent. Okay. Of what religion is. Again, religion is a Western concept. Is more of a Western concept, not a Hebraic concept from the Hebrew scriptures. Because in the Hebrew scriptures, there is no word for religion. The closest one is knowledge. Dot is knowledge. We are not to form a new knowledge.
Now,
well, we have,
again.
Say
that again.
In Hebrew, there is not a word for religion in the Hebrew language. The closest thing that comes to it is the word knowledge. Okay. We are not to form or create a new knowledge. And what we have is The Creator gave Adam 6 commandments. Adam passed 6 of these things down to Noah. After the flood, Noah was given a 7th one by God on the issue of eating meat to finish them out. Again, categorical, which we will be getting into, Hashem willing, here in the near future. When we create a new knowledge, this is the knowledge that God implanted to Adam. This is how you walk with me, in essence, and how you walk with man, my creation. This is how you are to become a complete creation with me and the rest of the creation. Anything else added to that would be a new knowledge that didn't exist, and a knowledge that didn't come from God, but came from man. And we have to be careful, because in our own thoughts and our own imaginations, we will invent a knowledge that comes from us and not from the creation. And that's creating the new knowledge, or a new religion. See, in the seven categorical, there, if you look at them, write them down on a piece of paper and stare at them. There are no sacred times. There are no sacred holidays, certain dietary rules other than not eating meat taken from a living animal. There's no rituals. There's no ceremonies. There's no ceremonial garb to wear. All of that's going. And those of us that's come out of religions, or that are still in religions that has all of that, it's one of the hardest things to do is to return to the foundational knowledge of the Creator. It's hard because you feel you don't have anything to do.
Right.
I call it a worship void, because I was heavy in, I can't carry a tune, but I sure did love to praise. And so that was heavy. I still do that. I still praise the Creator. I praise Him in things I do. I praise Him in the words. There's certain Psalms that in Psalms 145 is my favorite. And I'll get it out. There's a let me pull this up here real quick since we're talking about this. One of my favorite this is an ancient prayer and song of Israel. It's very beautiful. Let me make sure I can find it here. It's called Adon Olam. The Lord of the universe, who reigned before anything who is created, when all that is made by His will, when all was made by His will, He was acknowledged as King, and when all shall end, He still alone shall reign. He was, He is, and He shall always be in glory. And He is one, and there is no other to compare, to join to Him, without beginning, without end. And to Him belongs dominion and power. And He is my God and my living God. To Him I flee in the time of grief. And He is my miracle and my refuge, and who answers the day that I call. To Him I call in my spirit in the time of sleep and awakening. And even if my spirit leaves, the Creator is with me, and I shall not fear. This is ancient. This is before most of the modern religions that are today. An ancient prayer and praise from Israel. And when I have those times that, I want to go, I don't have ceremony. I don't have a holy day or Sabbaths and stuff like that, because we weren't created with that. We were created for the purpose of settling the earth. I can come into my study, my living room, or I can go out in the backyard, and I can take my prayer book right here, open up to this very ancient prayer of Israel, and say, the Lord of the universe, who reigned before anything was created. And dude, I'm ready to let loose. I'm back. I'm able to be who I am. I hope it wasn't a rabbit trail, but I'm just saying,
No,
you're not void when you take on the yoke of the 7 divine vessels of the 7 mitzvahs of mankind. You're not void of praise and worship. If that's something that is dear to you, which is dear to a lot of people, you're not void of that. You're just taking hold of your birthright, and you're returning back to the original knowledge, not religion. You're coming back to the original knowledge of God. That knowledge that was here before. It was here before in the beginning. And we're getting back to that. That's what we're doing with the 7 laws of mankind. You're not void. You don't need special clothes and days and foods and fast times. As one of those that are born of the nations, the non-Jewish nations, you can be, as the American Army's slogan is, you can be all you can be.
Almost got into that one. Yeah. Hoorah, he said.
Hoorah. I wasn't military. My grandfather was, but I wasn't. But I hope I gave some food for thought tonight. I really do. I hope I gave some food for thought for those who really want to seek the Creator out in truth and in knowledge, and the original knowledge.
Yeah.
Not the man-made knowledge. There's a lot of man-made knowledge. And you have to, no, I'm not going to get into that's for future time. There's just a lot of man-made knowledge, but there's some knowledge out there that some from other places thinks that's man-made is not, but that's for other lessons to show what is man-made and what is not.
Yeah. So
anyhow, any other questions real quick that we need to tap into?
No, I believe that's pretty well got it covered. I believe you've covered it quite well tonight. Brought us to where you wanted us to be tonight, and for our future class next Wednesday night.
Yes. Well, I don't know exactly where I'm going next week, just as of yet, but my desire is if the Creator wills, we will be getting into those 7. If you are hearing this tonight and you're asking yourself, well, I briefly, we're going to be getting into them, and we're not going to just cover one class. We might cover the essence of what it is, and then we're going to get into the details of what it is, and we're going to study it out.
Yeah.
Just like so many people put plaques on their wall that has these lists of commands, and that becomes their faith, but they've not ever studied it out, each one individually in detail, way out there to see where they fit.
Yeah.
And that's what I hope to do in the future. So please keep coming to the class. If this is something that, you're getting something out of it, Baruch Hashem, please keep joining us, and we'll keep doing whatever we can do, with the Creator's help.
Great. I think Terry, a couple, as Amuel likes to say, my aha moment. And
did she have another aha moment? I want to hear it.
No, I just use her phrase.
Oh,
that's
okay.
her phrase. So I just used it. I love, let's see, I understand better now that the aspect of religion, that the word is it's not a Hebrew word. It's not found in Hebrew, but the word that's best fits there is knowledge. Don't create a new knowledge. Did I say that correctly?
Right.
And then also the fact of how they started a new knowledge or religion or path of worship, or however we want to describe that, is it started out
Innocently.
But it ended, well, it's not over yet, but it's a tragic
Right.
thing. So okay, I'm going to stop before I start preaching. So okay. Well, you got anything else to add to it, Terry? We've almost been an hour and 30 minutes.
Not anymore on this. Just remember, I know y'all are going to have you're going to have questions. Matter of fact, Scotty and I are going to have questions even when we look into this. That's how we get together. We'll discuss something and questions evolve and things like that. Write them down, pass them along, get them to Scotty or myself. We're both on Facebook. We are both in the group Panay Connection with Israel, which is a Facebook group for Torah for the Nations. You can message us there. Just make a note when you message, like you're not one of our friends, that, hey, this is from class. Let us know, right? This is from question from class, something like that. So we'll know to open up your questions, but get us your questions. We'll do, even maybe we can do a class on the questions or two. Matter of fact, tonight's class was from a question we got last week. So feel free to, and there's nothing dumb ever asked. Don't think it's too simple.
Right.
So feel free to ask us. And we don't debate. We're not debate. We're about Scotty and I are about education, not debating and missionizing. We're about education. That's our we hope to be. That's our goal, is to educate. So, Scotty, if you want.
Thomas asked a question: what is the best book to study the 7 laws? Now, the Brit Shalom is a good beginning.
It's a good general. Yes. It's done in a practical way. It's not for, it'll introduce you some. And then,
the Divine Code. How's that?
Divine Code. Now, when we get into our classes, I'll be using the Divine Code. Divine Code, there's 2 books that are really good: Divine Code and the Noahide Study Law Study Edition. Both of those really require to have a teacher, because you're going to get some questions. The way they're written.
Correct.
You can pick it up and read it, but you can't read it from a Western mindset, or you'll misinterpret it.
Right.
Really quick.
Right.
So, a real good book. I got to get me a new one, because this one's coming apart. I really like this. If you're really interested, I can't remember. I don't know what the new price is. I bought this several years ago. I've got pages are falling out of this, and I've read it. You get me none. The 7 Gates of Righteous Knowledge is a really good.
Yeah.
A real good book of learning about spiritual knowledge and faith for righteous non-Jews is what that's for. It's really good. It's written by Rabbi Moshe Weiner and Dr. Michael Schulman, which I've talked with Dr. Schulman quite a bit. He's really very, very educated man.
Yeah. All right, Terry, we're gonna come to a close. I want to remind everybody, give to charity. See how I fix that up. So these give to charity, and you know what, Terry? Wait a minute, I got one more thing to say.
Go for it.
How about greeting people? You talked about holding the door for somebody. How about greeting people? Is that a form of a blessing?
Yes.
That you greet people. So it can be
you might have somebody that's down and out, don't know what they're going through, and good morning. Maybe something that's all they needed.
Thomas just put something in his little charity jar.
There you go.
Yeah, just a greeting. I always find that greeting can change somebody's life. So we thank everybody. Are you through, Terry? I'm going to close this out.
Yeah, go ahead and close this out. On this will be posted on the YouTube Tour for Nations YouTube channel. If you're not a subscriber, subscribe to Tour for the Nations, and also you can leave comments there as well, and share if this is something that helped you a lot and you might help someone else. Feel free to share.
All right. We had quite a few in the YouTube channel and some on the couple different Facebook areas. We shared it. So we thank y'all for listening. Thank you all for coming here in the Zoom room. As always, it's great to see you. And we want you to share it around. Like Terry said, subscribe. And I guess, and remember Rabbi Pesach, he just kindly, he'll be in the room from time to time. He just kind of stepping back and letting Terry and I kindly just come up to the forefront. I guess you would say that. Did I say that right, Terry? Just kindly.
He's asked us to help out. He's got a lot of stuff going on right now in his personal life, and he himself is needing some time to recharge. And we're his students, and he just asked us to help, and we're glad that we can help Rabbi out a lot.
Feel honored to do it.
Oh, and remember, Wednesday nights, we'll post it in B'nai Noach and other places. Wednesday nights at 8:00 is this class.
Yeah.
8:00 New York City time.
New York time. All right, everybody. Until next week. We thank y'all for coming, and we will see you next week.